say para-unity is a myth. Many believe that the paranormal community is toxic, filled with egos, know-it-alls, and wannabe celebrities. Let's clear the air here and now. This thing we call para-unity is what we make it. Tonight, let's do something different. Welcome to Necromancer Live. Hello and welcome to the Necromancer Live Show. I'm your host, Justin Brown, and we are presenting episode 91, and we will be talking to Brandon Alvis of Ghost Hunters on A&E, and we'll definitely be bringing back the hype for season 2, which is coming out April. I'm not going to say the day. I think it's 8th, but if it's not, he'll correct me if I'm wrong. But before we get into it, thank you all for joining me. If you're watching on YouTube, what's up, YouTube? If you're watching on Facebook, what's up? Periscope, what's up? And if Twitch is your is your channel of choice tonight, what's going on over there on Twitch? Brandon Alvis, of course, is the tech guy over there on the Ghost Hunters team this time, and we're going to be reading his bio, and it's very interesting, and we're definitely going to be diving into some aspects and details of this bio. So we're going to have a 2-hour interview. We're going to take a break in the middle. Please share, guys. So Brandon Alvis has always had an interest in questions about the paranormal after tragically losing 2 brothers, one to cancer and the other to suicide. Starting with a few friends using standard tools and procedures, he realized that many mistakes commonly found when investigating the paranormal. This motivated him to propagate a team specializing in many fields and to develop new methods, not only reliable but convincing, introducing the scientific approach and naming this team American Paranormal Research Association, aka APRA or A.P.R.A. This new approach, along with his leadership and entrepreneurial skills, has propelled Brandon to the paranormal technician of the Ghost Hunters team. Brandon has investigated over 200 public and private locations with A.P.R.A., many of which bear historical significance. Investigations have included mental hospitals, prisons, well-known murder sites, cemeteries, and private homes, as well as more famous sites like Alcatraz Island, Preston Castle, and the South Pittsburgh Hospital. As a natural skeptic, Brandon researches every location meticulously before he begins collecting evidence in an effort to make the study of the paranormal as credible as possible. So, without further ado, Brandon, buddy, what's going on, dude?
Justin, thanks for having me on, man. I appreciate it.
You're very welcome, man. I'm glad that you said yes. You could definitely say no to anybody that just messages you up or emails you to come on the show. So I'm glad that you said yes, and I'm glad that we're here having this discussion tonight. And we're gonna have some fun. And like I was saying to you before we started the show, I want to come out of this. I want the viewers to take away that Brandon is not only genuine and authentic, but somebody you can relate to. And I think in the bio, there's definitely right off the rip, man, there's something that we can all, a bunch of us could relate to, dealing with the question or the harsh reality of mortality. It's never as profound until it hits home so close. The first question I have is, was there any interest in the paranormal or the occult or the spooky before you had to deal with these personal deaths?
You know, it's a great question, Justin. But no, I had never had a paranormal experience of any kind.
Okay.
But in 1995, I was 8 years old. My oldest brother died of cancer. He was only 24 years old, very young. And so I had to kind of grow up quickly. You know, my parents losing one of their children, I can never imagine what that's like. So I was put in a very particular situation with my family where I kind of grew up in a graveyard, if you will. I was there
Wow.
on a daily basis with my mother. She was grieving. She was mourning the loss of her son, her oldest son. And I was there frequently. I had to go through a lot of grieving therapy and things like that in school that I didn't really want to go into. It was just kind of standard practice in the school system that I was in at that time. So I kind of had to grow up really quickly, and I really had to start thinking about the possibility of life after death and mortality, just as you mentioned. So I kind of started thinking about that from a very young age, at the age of 8 years old. And then in 2004, I had another brother commit suicide. I was 17 at the time, and I, went even further into it. So I kind of just grabbed any type of literature I could about ghosts and hauntings and life after death. I mean, everything from psychic investigations to scientific, anything you can imagine, even religious. I really kind of just grasped onto the idea, what happens when we die?
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of started gravitating towards Einstein and his theories about that energy is neither created nor destroyed, and talking about
Mm-hmm.
how within ourselves, our brains are firing off neurons, and there's energy within all of us. And where does that go? And that's kind of where I started to really look into, and the things I started to really grasp onto. So before I ever stepped foot into the field in 2006, I really started to reach out to professionals from various technical industries, medical doctors, scientists, engineers, people that could really help me remain grounded within my research. That was the biggest thing for me. I wanted to go out there and be as credible as possible and really stand up for something that I believed in. I never knew if there was a life after death, but if I was going to look into it and try and find out if there was a possible existence of life after death, I wanted to do that as credibly as possible.
Right. Yes, I can definitely relate to that. And it sounds like from, that short story that you're definitely you gravitate towards science, and dealing with that type of loss at a young age and all the things that you said. You have to address your own spirituality somehow, some way. It's like it would seem like a crime or even immoral not to at that point. So, and then you're faced, well, what am I personally going to do? What makes sense to me? And I like how, you stay grounded in science, but you want to explore things in that manner. So I really dig that. I really dig that. So I guess the next question would be, I everybody starts off, in similar ways. Did you kind of watch the shows? Did you read books? How did you kind of get started and kind of go through the learning process?
Well, for me, the thing that really jumped out was books, literature. I started reading books from Hans Holzer, which I know a lot of people are familiar with, Hazel M. Dennings, Emily Peach, which are a few people within the genre that probably aren't as widely known. And I started reading, I started studying and looking at it from not only the perspective of the scientific side of it, the psychic side of it, as well as the medical side of it as well. Hazel M. Dennings is a PhD, and she wrote a really great book called True Hauntings a number of years ago that really resonated with me prior to going out and investigating. And then I found a book called Things That Go Bump in the Night, which is a very generic sounding name, but it was written by someone named Emily Peach. And the research involved in that was extensive. Not only did they talk about protocols and the ways to go and investigate a location and eyewitness testimony, but there was detailed floor plans and all this tremendous amount of work that went in behind the research that really set an idea for me, an ideology, right? And then all of a sudden, 2004, Ghost Hunters comes out, a show that really put paranormal research on the map and into the mainstream. And that kind of just sent me even further into it to say, hey, look, I'm not the only one looking into this stuff. I mean, at the time, I could go into various chat rooms and whatnot and look into blogs and whatnot. But it wasn't until I saw Ghost Hunters in '04 that showed like, hey, look, people are really doing this, and I could go out and do that as well.
Right. So yeah, that's it. Pretty much, seeing the people going out and doing it really, helps, give you incentive to say, hey, they can do it. I can do it. If these two plumber guys can do it, I can do it. And I think that was clever of them. I think I'm right by saying that these two plumber guys, if they can do it, anybody can kind of do it. But they're going to approach it, with, objective minds, critical minds. They're going to try to debunk. They're going to do their research properly, so on and so forth. So I thought Ghost Hunters, especially how they started off, was about as good as you can get with balancing trying to keep people entertained for the 30 or 45 minutes and providing some good, useful information on how to actually investigate people's homes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It was a perfect medium, just like you said.
And it's tough. I want people to understand the TV business. A lot of people just don't really know, and it's no fault of their own, but once you get into that industry, there are compromises. So I think maybe we'll go into what those compromises are and how you have to manage those things and find that balance with Ghost Hunters, because this new reboot, this new season of Ghost Hunters 1 and then 2 coming up shortly, it seems like the crew is very passionate. It's like a new invigorating passion that they are now wanting to show people as far as being what's next for Ghost Hunters. How are we going to push the envelope and bump up that sort of thing? So let's firstly talk about what the challenges are and the compromises, and then we'll see what the pros are.
Right, exactly. You're 100% right. And bringing this new batch of people in, we've never worked together before, so
Right.
that's a challenge within itself. So you're going to see that growth period on camera, which is actually really interesting. It's not like we were an established team like Taps was prior to coming in and working on this show. But what makes it so great is everyone involved in this new version of Ghost Hunters is extremely knowledgeable in some aspect of the field and some aspect of research. So bringing all of us together, kind of throwing us in the fire and saying, hey, go investigate cases, it worked out pretty well. And you'll see a definite change within season 2 and a dynamic change that's just, I think people are really going to be blown away by and really connect to.
So as far as the challenges go, let's say the editing part of it. A lot of people I see on YouTube, there's a lot of comments that I get on my own channel and a lot of that I see on other people's channel. A lot of people like raw, unedited, as real as you could possibly get. So kind of explain why you can't do that on Ghost Hunters as much as you would like to.
One simple statement: commercial breaks. So, but the thing is, on season 2, you're going to see a little bit more breathing room, if that makes sense. On season 1, there were certain aspects of reintroducing the show and having Grant Wilson talk about why he picked this new team and going into why they're the ones to come together to do this new show. So with the new season, you're going to see a bit more breathing room. Like the way the first season was cut and the way it comes across, it looks like we walk into a location and all of a sudden activity starts to take place. That's not in any way, shape, or form how it happened in
Mm-hmm.
reality. We go in and we're in there for hours and hours and hours, if anything happens. So the new season, you're going to see a bit more of the methodology behind it, about us going in and really investigating, not having to explain why these people are here and why they're part of the team versus us going in and investigating a case, because now it's pretty established. These are the team members. This is why they're here. And now it goes a little bit more into the reality of a paranormal investigation, which I'm really excited about.
Yeah, I am too. I'm definitely waiting, chomping at the bit to watch. It's the only time it's been a long time since I've been actually excited to see a ghost show come out. So that's saying something, Brandon. When I spoke to Daryl on Necromancer, I think 2 weeks ago, or it might have been 4 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago maybe, I actually asked him, I was like, so when you set up these investigations, you vet them all out, you figure out which ones you're going to go film, I asked him, was there any that you had went to and not found anything? And he said no. And I think, if I remember, the reason why he thought that you guys were so successful is not only how you approached and all the tech and all the resources you had, was the difference maker with let's say if APRA went out to these locations, maybe they haven't been as successful because they had some limitation, as far as true or tech or methodology. Can you kind of explain or kind of answer that same question?
Absolutely. Within the first season, one example of us going to a location and not really finding anything paranormal related, we did an episode at the original Springs Hotel in Oakville, Illinois. And we went in there, and it was a place steeped in suicides, a lot of death there, a lot of paranormal activity associated with the place. But we went in and proved that not only was natural infrasound creating a lot of this said activity, but there was also a lot of high EMF in the place. So we started to talk about temporal lobe activity and people being
Mm,
influenced not only by the natural infrasound, but this high EMF. And we were able to say, hey, look, we don't per se think that there's an entity here or a ghost. We think that there's very natural explanations to what's been going on here. But season 2 is a different story. Season 2, we have been sent to the most isolated parts of this country, places that people that are hobbyists or investigating the paranormal will not go to because it's so difficult to get there. And I think that
right.
plays a big part within it. And not only that, A&E and Pilgrim Studios did a very great job at vetting these people and vetting these eyewitnesses, some of which are government employees that came forward and said, hey, look, we're having tremendous paranormal activity, things I can't
Hmm.
explain. We want your help. So I think that the isolation, the lack of contamination, and these locations really aided within the fact that we went out there and were able to document some things that we really can't explain. I think that really plays a big factor into what happened with season 2.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much what Daryl had said. They said, A&E had such a good job of finding these locations because let's face it, the last thing you want to do is send people to a place where the chances of documenting something within the window that you have is low. So that is a testament to how good of a job they did, and I think that's fantastic because that's basically what everybody tries to do. They try to find the hot spots. They try to find where's the most haunted places, when are they most active. It's tough, and that's part of the job that a lot of people might pass over or might not focus on quite as bit, because a lot of people, maybe they're limited to what they can go investigate. So maybe someone calls them and say, hey, I got a demon in my house. They just rush right over before they, properly vet the situation. So I think that's a good takeaway from this show is, hey man, do your research, find out where the ghosts are, and then go get them. So I guess if we go back into your bio, why don't you talk about APRA for a little bit? Because I did get a chance to watch a few of the videos, and they were very interesting. And one of the things I got from it was you guys like to set up situations. I think I watched one where you were playing with infrasound and you played some in this location and then you turned it off and then you brought a group in and you wanted to see how it affected not only the environment, but how it affects the people when they go
Right.
into them. So kind of talk about APRA if you want to do some shout outs of those people in the group as well, and kind of, reflect on your roots in APRA.
Absolutely, man. I started A.P.R.A in 2006, and I was lucky enough to bring on some amazing people. JJ Seacott, Matt Goldman, Michael Rudy, and also a man I've been working with for 10 years now, Dr. Harry Clore. Dr. Harry Clore is the only person in history to receive 2 PhDs simultaneously in any discipline, and he received those in physics and chemistry.
Wow.
And with APRA, our main goal, and my main goal, was always to reach out to these professionals from various technical industries. And Dr. Harry Clore was always that guy that, worked with me and was willing to not only work with me, but go out into the field and aid us in our investigations. So for almost 16 years now, we've been investigating the paranormal and doing that from scientific principles as much as possible. And a lot of times you hear people out there that talk about how, well, you can't be scientific unless you control your environment. I think it's a really funny statement because when people are making scientific advancements in space and the ocean, are they controlling those environments? I don't think so. But going forward, having Dr. Clore part of this team and going out and testing things like infrasound, like you talked about, we go into a location, we think about the aspect that infrasound does affect people, a majority of people. How is that going to affect not only the people once you bring them in after pumping the infrasound into a location, but does that affect the said phenomena in any way, shape, or form? So we've done that. Another really interesting experiment that we did was at Preston Castle. We did a show for the Science Channel in 2014 called The Unexplained Files. And Dr. Clore came up with a really great theory that he thinks that it's very possible that the activity taking place at Preston Castle was associated with the fact that when people go in, they have these preconceived notions, they become frightened, they release what is referred to as a fear pheromone, which is natural within animals and even our own people, where if you are afraid, you release this fear pheromone, and other people can be influenced by that, right? And so we went in, we tested that, we brought in skeptics, non-believers, believers, and we put them through all throughout the building, and we see how that affected them. We tested their cortisol levels to see if that worked in any way, shape, or form, and the test was inconclusive. But it's things like that is what's going to push this field forward. Not only stepping outside of the box to try and see if there's somewhat of a natural explanation, but how does the known phenomena within science affect what we perceive to be paranormal phenomena or associated with hauntings? And that's something that we've done for a number of years, and it's something I've adapted into the platform of Ghost Hunters, and something that people are going to see going forward on season 2.
I love it, man. We do a lot of double-blind experiments with our psychics in the group, with everybody in the group, and I think I want to touch base on what you said. I know I did read the comment about people saying that, well, you don't have control over these environments. Now, I want people out there to understand control doesn't necessarily, but can mean lab conditions where you're investigating. The times where it doesn't have to be lab condition is there's this thing called a control and an experiment. You have variables, independent variables, and a control. Those are the things that you can do science in when you cannot be in a lab. So what you're doing is you're introducing the control into your experiment, which is a situation where you're comparing what the independent variables are to the control.
Exactly.
We're not getting into we're not going to have a science class here, but I just wanted to make that clear. And that was your argument. I think I wanted to emphasize on what are controls in an experiment. It doesn't mean a lab is set up at Preston Castle.
That level of thinking right there. That's okay. There's lab testing, and that's part of science in ways, but not all science is conducted that way. It's not. Right. And to think about it that way and to be a skeptic on that level is detrimental. I mean, you're technically not a skeptic at that point. At that point, you are going in with a bias. You're going in and be like, well, they're looking for a reason to say it doesn't exist. A skeptic is somebody that wants to find evidence that the phenomena is real, right? So you take scientific equipment, you consult someone that knows how to use that equipment, you utilize that within your investigation, you collect the data, you provide that data to that consultant, someone that knows exactly how to observe and read that data, and you draw conclusions from it. You don't have to have a completely controlled environment. Yes, you want to control it as much as possible, but you're never going to get near lab perfection. It's not going to happen. They don't get near lab perfection when they study space or the ocean. It just doesn't happen. So some of the biggest breakthroughs that have happened in science were not in near perfect lab conditions. So we can't think in that box. And as soon as we do, what's the point even?
Right. Yeah, it's interesting. You have to understand bias, confirmation bias, like you brought up. Psychology in the mind. I know that you're already thinking about this stuff. You had alluded, when you were talking about the infrasound and the Preston Castle thing. So the idea of learning about how the mind works, learning about psychology, learning about, what false positives are, what you need to consider when you're investigating, I think is pretty good. If you can do that consistently and successfully, case by case, I think that's all you can pretty much ask out of people. Field research is not in a lab. It never has been, right?
Exactly. Right. Well, I guess that's why they call it field research.
Right.
But, again, like with this new season of Ghost Hunters, we implemented a very particular piece of equipment, a very sensitive scientific piece of equipment that is not always used in a lab. The particular matter and the matter that we theorized could possibly be the factor of the manifestation of what we perceive to be entities.
Mm-hmm.
We took this piece of equipment, it records that particular type of matter, mm-hmm. and we went out and we utilized it. We put it into a situation where they say, hey, for years now, I've been witnessing this apparition in this hallway.
Mm-hmm.
So we said, hey, I talked to Dr. Harry Clore, and I talked to other scientists that he works with, and I said, hey, if ghosts are real and they're manifesting, and these eyewitnesses are telling the truth, and they are manifesting, and they're there, how would they manifest? What would be the matter associated with that? What's the mechanics behind it? They said, well, why don't you try this? And we theorized it could possibly be this particular type of matter. And we put it in the field, and it worked. And we captured something that we can't explain. We provide that evidence to our consultant. He can't explain it. So therefore we're left with what they would call paranormal, right? So it's interesting, and I can't wait to share it with everybody. I can get into more detail about that after April 8th, but it's interesting, and I can't wait for everyone to see it.
It gets sciencey. I know you can't talk about it, but I'm going to make an assumption, and I'm going to share my own thoughts on, after talking to Daryl and now talking to you about it. When you're looking at manifestations, certain types of manifestations, you can infer certain types of, mechanics scientifically. Let's say a mist. You see a mist. Well, what can cause a mist? Well, when I was thinking about this, I was like, well, if there's ionized particles in the air and the right amount of humidity or some type of condensation was at the right point, it clumps together when you ionize the air. So let's just say there's a electromagnetic field in that vicinity, and the ionized air is there. It's going to gather together and clump together a mist formation. So if that is true, now you have a hypothesis you can test. You sit something there that can see ionized particles doing those things. That's when you can test it, and that's probably what we're probably going to see on Ghost Hunters. Am I close?
Close.
Okay. But that's an example.
Similar. Yeah, no, you're right on the money with that, 100%. That's why when we investigate locations, and we always try to document our environment, that's standard protocol within our investigations, and something I implemented into the team is when we go in, we have to know all of the environmental conditions associated with the location we're investigating. Everything from humidity, pressure, to temperature, to EMF, all of it. We have to know all of it. We have to. And if we are not documenting that and collecting that data, not only from a baseline perspective, but when we're in there and start to have things that we can't explain, we're just not doing it right. And now when we're doing these investigations, we're compiling all of that data. And that data is now being stockpiled. And we're able to go back through our investigations and say, hey, look, we collected this piece of visual anomaly, or this piece of visual evidence, or an EVP, or a piece of audio we can't explain. Here were the exact environmental conditions associated with that during that time. And the beauty of us going in there and doing that is that we are recording everything to a timeline, to a time code. So if we have something we can't explain that happens, say visually or audibly or whatever it may be, another piece of equipment's, having some kind of anomalous activity associated with it, we can go back through that timeline and say, hey, look, these were the exact environmental conditions associated with that. And that's the best we can do, really, when it comes to controlling an environment, and really, doing our due diligence when it comes to saying, hey, look, we are monitoring the environmental conditions, and we're starting to see a pattern.
And that's where things like data loggers, the EDI Plus, come in. I know I've seen you guys advocate the use of data loggers. So would you condone the use of EDI Plus device? Is that what you primarily
Absolutely.
use, or?
Yeah, that's the main source, because it's easy. It's an all-in-one device, and the sensors that they use within that device are good quality sensors. They're good. I mean, we can go even above and beyond that. Obviously, we can go way deeper into it and bring in far more accurate pieces of scientific equipment that have better sensor technology than is in the EDI. But when it comes to the practical use within the paranormal field and everyone that's out there, I think the EDI is a fantastic device to try and document the environment. But it's just setting a protocol, and making sure that we do try and do our best to document the environment. And if we start to see patterns, right, associated with certain type of phenomena that we're documenting with environmental conditions, that's taking it a step further.
Right. I think The only way we can get better is if you're looking at the volume of the field of that you're researching, every little point where EVP can happen or something can manifest could have a slightly different value in the environmental conditions. So having an EDI plus everywhere would probably not practical, but be better.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And the beauty of that device too, that just makes it even more special, is the fact that it is recording that data to a SD card, and you can look at that data and you can archive that data. That's important, and that's something that people weren't doing in the field before. Some probably, and some in academia and in that nature, people have done studies like that. But now it's widely available to the public. If we set that precedent and we set that protocol for the rest of the field, this is when we start to make breakthroughs. This is when we are going to start being taken seriously by not only the scientific community, but as well as the public. We have to start setting a protocol and setting a precedent. And once you have that information, you open yourself up to scientific scrutiny. You go to professionals from technical industries, people that know about the exact information you're providing. If you provide them that information, they're an expert in that. They will provide you the factual information that's going to help our investigations.
Yes, I 100% agree. Let's go to chat. We've been kind of neglecting them. There is a lot of people that is enjoying the show. They enjoy Ghost Hunters. I know Daryl Marston was in the chat. I don't know if he still is. Do we have any questions? I love the hell out of that guy.
He's one of my favorite people, man.
Yeah, I was really glad to see him on the show. What do we have as far as questions or interesting, thought-provoking comments from the Peanut Gallery?
Derek asked, how often do arguments arise during evidence review when debunking what others on the team think is paranormal?
That's a good one.
It doesn't happen too often, luckily, because we're all very much of similar mindset. And sometimes, there's evidence presented that we say, hey, does this go to the client, or do we present this on the show? There hasn't really been arguments, thankfully. We're all very level-headed and open-minded. So we have a really happy medium between the two. But, if we walk in and a piece of evidence is provided, we can easily say, hey, look, here's a natural variable, or here's a reason behind it. There's usually not an argument behind it, thankfully. And everyone's really not only open-minded, very logical. So luckily no arguments yet, but hey, who knows?
Wow, that's great. Because I've interviewed over 90 people. You're number 91, and I've talked to over 100 people about this. It's uncountable. So the hardest thing to do on a paranormal investigation is remove the human element, the subjectiveness of who we are. So when you start thinking about that, the more passionate you are, the more how hard you're trying to look at something, you end up trying too hard, and you end up being, so you're being subjective with something. So one thing I can remember from the last season of our YouTube series was one of my tech leader, Derek Schreiner, who asked that question. He saw an anomaly on his infrared camera, and he was like, whoa, because it happened coincidentally when he asked something to appear. And I'm telling him, it's like, it doesn't typically look like illuminated dust in front of the focal point of the lens, but that's probably most likely what it is. And he's like, man, he just wanted it to be what he asked for it to be. And that's what I try to teach people all the time is, as long as you try to stay objective, don't try not to attach all these emotions that, hey, we want this to be what it is so bad. We're doing it right. So exactly. It sounds like that's what you guys are good at, is not attaching that.
Yeah, we're very lucky to have, like minds. But the biggest thing for us, and like what I always try and preach with all of this, is the fact that we are there to observe and report. You know what I mean? We have to obviously put ourselves into the investigation and try to collect this information and data. But at the end of the day, we're there to observe, report. We observe it, we analyze it, and then we report that information to the client. We provide them a resolution according to what they're looking at us for our investigation. Mm-hmm. But we can't inject ourselves into it as far as our own belief system or what we're looking to get out of the investigation. We go in, we observe, and we report.
Do you feel like Grant is a good person to keep everybody grounded and keep everybody thinking like that and operating like that?
Yeah, I mean, he's been doing this for 30 years, over 30 years at this point, and he's seen it all. You know what I mean? But he has put a lot of trust within us, and he knows that we were all brought here for a very specific reason, and he knows that we're there, and we're going to do the best that we possibly can, and we're going to do the best for not only the client but for the paranormal field as well. So, but he knows it all, so he's the guy to go to say, hey, look, Grant, this is something I've never seen, or this is a situation I've never encountered. What's your advice? And he's the perfect guy to go to.
There was an interesting episode on season 1. You were at Madison Seminary, and I forgive me, I cannot remember the girl and the gentleman that was up in the asylum area. Help me remember their names.
Brian and Rochelle.
There you go.
Okay,
yeah.
So they started experiencing things personally, which is reported up there a lot. Okay, I've been there. We shot our own documentary and investigation there. It's weird up there. So we watched them go through that, and then when they reported back to the rest of the team, Grant's, he's rubbing his chin. He's like, there's something that I need to look into. And what he ended up doing was looking into the history, looking to see if there was any psychological front loading or anything that would maybe be the cause of them having those experiences, or maybe even upsetting a potential spiritual presence there, and maybe that's why people are getting those experiences. Do you feel like that was a good example of how you can go about trying to figure out why people are having these experiences, and maybe something, how to figure out why, not only why these people are having experiences, but how to get to the bottom of them?
Absolutely. You have to look into all of it, especially the psychological aspect of it. It's tough to go into a location and know all of the history and not have that influence you in some way, shape, or form. I don't think that's necessarily what happened with Brian and Rochelle during their investigation. I think that their experiences within their own. I know they documented a few things that we could not explain during that period of time. But I think there was a lot of things going on within the Madison Seminary that didn't really make the episode of Ghost Hunters. And that's very unfortunate, because there were some things that we uncovered at Madison Seminary that was taking place not only by the owner of the building, but the people that frequent it very often. I think there's a thing called oversaturation. And I'm sure you're familiar with it, Justin. When you're going in to a building consistently, almost every day for 365 days out of the year, and you're completely bombarding what some in the paranormal field would claim to be the consciousness of people that once lived and possibly died in this building. I think that once you get to a point where you're oversaturating these entities and you're going in and provoking or doing certain things, I think that it sometimes can be a more negative experience, or more of a, I can't speak exactly for what Brian and Rochelle experienced up there, but I know that there were some certain things that we uncovered in that location that did not make the episode. I think would explain that a little more.
Right. Well, I get what you're saying. A lot of times you'll go into a location that's investigated every day of the year, and you'll get a zoo effect. You ever been to a zoo to where the animals turn away from you?
Yep.
And don't give you any stimuli whatsoever? You'll have that. And then you'll have when monkeys attack, or when something just flips out and can't take it anymore and eats their trainer or something. That type of behavior makes sense to me. And the fact that a lot of groups don't take that in consideration is I don't want to say that is bad on them, but you really need to think about it, because the first time I went to Waverly Hills, I was thinking about this exact thing. So I'm like, okay, what am I going to do? I'm going to start thinking about how it feels to be in that hospital, to have TB and being told you're going to die. Sorry. So I started watching documentaries, not paranormal ones, just actual historical documentaries, and seeing the raw footage of those poor people going through that. And I saturated my own psyche with how am I going to connect with this building. And I tell you what, dude, it was the best thing I could have possibly done. I set down the camera, I set down the gear. I had Tina take me through there to the morgue, to all these places. And I felt like Amy Allen, bro. I felt like someone just told me 1,000 times that you're going to die. Sorry about your luck. And it was strange, man. It was completely strange. And I wasn't walking into the building with that in my head. It just hit you. And your gut tells you that there is something to psychokinetic phenomena. Living people can do this, and the energies can lay dormant in these locations. And there's something there. Almost every paranormal investigator I've talked to intuitively knows this, and they try, however, method they can use to look into the PK. And I'm a huge PK researcher. So there is something that does work on physical systems in our reality that has to do with this phenomena. And I cannot wait to the point where we find actual evidence of this occurring and what that will say and how that will help propel us into the future of paranormal research. It's like, there's got to be something that we got to figure out to where we can say, hey, look, this is true whether you believe it or not.
Exactly.
It needs to happen.
I agree 100%. I think you're right on the money with that. And I think going into these locations and you're putting that energy out, and that energy is going to come back in some way, shape, or form. And I think that you're right with the PK stuff and the telekinetic activity, thinking about that. It's interesting. I think that with Madison Seminary, there's a big human element involved within that location. Mm-hmm. And I could say a lot more that I'm just not going to say because it didn't air in the episode, but I did document that from my own research, and it's something I held on to because I think that the certain things that happen in that building are disgraceful and shouldn't be taking place. And sometimes, I've always thought about locations all across this country. Some people buy abandoned mental hospitals or prisons or things of that nature for their own gain and their own personal influence, right? And I always said that if there was such thing as paranormal malpractice, certain people should have their buildings taken away. I think there's some people across this country that own buildings that should have their buildings taken away, and I would call it paranormal malpractice.
Yeah, that's a very strong statement, and I can't disagree with it whatsoever. There's definitely ethics involved in everything that we do when it comes to matters of life after death, when it comes to matters of preserving our historical locations with dignity, and how we handle that location. The ethics there when you're making things a business and you're trying to transform this location into how you want to convey it to others. There's some lines that get crossed, and I think you're right on the money, but that's a strong statement. I'm sure that these type of statements is what gets a lot of people in trouble, which is something that we're going to transition into. Now that we know Brandon is a genuine, normal guy, he just wants to objectify paranormal phenomena like many other out there. What have you seen? Like, I know we've talked about it before we went live. What is the reaction of some of these people commenting on some of your stuff on social media? From your standpoint, why do you think people are reacting like that? I want to start talking about how you're perceived on social media.
Well, it's interesting, because I make statements that are, again, my opinion's my own opinion. Everyone's entitled to their own opinion, no matter what. That's just kind of a basic right for everybody, especially in this field. Everyone investigates differently. Everyone has their own ideology and their own belief system, and they're entitled to that in any way, shape, or form. But I've had even friends of mine that I've known for over 10 years that have been so upset about some of the things I've said about particular pieces of equipment that they don't talk to me anymore, and they don't associate with me anymore, which is, unfortunate, but it's, my tune now is no different than it was 10 years ago, and I just want to do my part and my best to try and further this field and to be taken seriously as a field. If you want to be a paratourist or if you want to do this as a hobby or for entertainment, that's all good, fine and dandy, no problem. But if we want to further this field and to be taken not only seriously by the public, but possibly the scientific community one day, we have to start holding ourselves accountable and start to really look at this from a logical perspective. And certain devices out there are just not reliable, or they're not something you should use in research in any way, shape, or form, some of which say for entertainment purposes only on the device itself. So I think that if you see that and then you're taking that and you're providing that as factual information or a factual evidence, and you're providing that to a client, especially homeowners, that's dangerous, man. That's a very dangerous precedence we're setting. And not only do we look bad for doing that, you're scaring the hell out of people. It's just not right.
Right. And we will get into this and the reason why. But we got some questions, and I'm getting in trouble because we're not asking the questions. I asked for questions.
I had my microphone unmuted because usually you pay attention to that. But okay, Art and Paranormal says, Brandon, if you felt that it may not be paranormal and something more psychological, how would you have handled that?
Well, I go into the situation, and when I reveal it to a client or someone that's asked us to come in and investigate, if I find what I believe to be a natural explanation for it, I will give them all the proper information associated with that. And not only that, I would have consulted someone that knows the exact topic, that can give me the proper information to say, hey, look, we believe this is the natural side to it, be that a psychological one or be that something from a natural phenomena perspective. So the biggest thing is being armed with the proper information, knowing exactly what the said phenomena is, and providing them with factual data.
Amen.
Okay. And I believe you answered some of this in the beginning, but Paranormal says, Brandon, can you give us an example of some of the new breakthroughs that you have made in 2000 and in the season 2 that I have seen your posting about?
I can't go too far into it, but I can tell you that we are using a very specific piece of equipment that was provided to me by a scientific consultant of mine who's been involved in the scientific community for many years. And I went to him and asked him, I said, hey, if ghosts are manifesting and people are seeing these said entities, from a scientific perspective, what theory or what type of matter do you think that would be? And not only did he provide me with a theory, he provided me with a very particular type of matter and a piece of equipment to document that. And we utilized that within multiple investigations in season 2. And we had very successful results that we cannot explain. So I can go into that further after April 8th. But as of right now, I can say that we have consulted scientists about a very particular type of natural phenomena that now is transcended into a said paranormal phenomena. And we'll all learn about that here in season 2.
Subatomic particles. There's a lot of theories out there. Like what are ghosts made of? Is it neutrinos? Is it this? Is it that? And it depends. I think there's so many different possibilities out there depending on what people's seeing. And I tell this story on my show frequently. I saw something really weird. It was this massive energy. When you look through it, I believe I was seeing it because the lighting was just right. It looked like you were looking through an aquarium that had some moving water and you could see waves. And around it was this staticky aura. It kind of looked like TV snow, the static you see on TV, but it was all translucent. And I'm sitting there wondering who just dosed me, right? It was strange. And later on, when I started doing research, and I'm like, that looked like it was ionized air molecules. You start trying to apply all these things, what it could be. So, right. I wish people would do that, because once they get that idea, the hypothesis is okay, all I need to do is get something to measure that and see if it is that.
Exactly.
So, and, doing that, I'm just going to say it, Brandon, doing that instead of just turning on your ghost box and doing that same thing for 10 years straight and trying to legitimize that without challenging that method, I don't understand it, because I researched the crap out of spirit boxes. I know you did too. Everybody has done it. So why people feel like when they get challenged with what they're doing, I think it's because a lot of times people look at this as their spirituality. I read an interesting article by an Oxford graduate, and he had some kind of degree. I forget what it was, but he said a lot of people that he interviewed and researched was taking ghost hunting as a spiritual practice. And that's where people get upset. That you're just like going up to him and saying, Jesus ain't real. Or, there ain't no heaven out there. And people are going to automatically be like, whoa, bro, that's offensive. And
No,
because
you're right.
Justin, I have lots of questions here on Facebook.
Yay.
The first question I have is from Derek. He said, Brandon, can you tell us what the ground penetrating radar showed at Madison Seminary?
The GPR, huh? We didn't use any GPR at Madison. We used a cadaver dog, but we didn't find anything, unfortunately. We did use a cadaver. It didn't make the episode, but we used a cadaver dog to go in and talk about this story about, they said that there was a legend associated with this woman that was killed and buried in the basement, right?
Mm-hmm.
So one of the legends associated there. And we used a cadaver dog, and I was actually present for that. And the cadaver dog hit on a few spots. And it was so interesting. We cut up the concrete and we looked. There was nothing. And they did I guess they did do a little bit of GPR, ground penetrating radar, to an extent, but not like official GPR. And nothing was found. Unfortunately, nothing. But the cadaver dogs did hit a few times, which was the reason behind us digging up that specific section and actually, cutting out the concrete.
Interesting. What's the questions? Let's bring them.
Well, Gina asked, will an apparition always be able to be seen or experienced in only one way? Example, you see an apparition in full form, or you see one as a mist. Will the one in form always present in form, and the mist always present as a mist?
That's interesting. That's a great question. I think that entities can manifest in different ways at different times. So it's definitely something to think about, to look into. And that's one of the things that we're actually trying to make in the breakthrough with this new season of Ghost Hunters, is the fact that we are actually documenting different types of manifestations. So we're really excited about that.
Yeah, that's definitely, we need to do a lot more revamping on. See, that's what I was talking to Daryl about. Like, not everybody has the resources that ghost hunters have. You can call in favors. You have more connections. You can get a hold of a piece of equipment that you wouldn't have been able to get a hold of if you weren't in the situation you were in. And I think, it's easy to say, well, ghost shows are fake. They're just trying to get views and money. They're going to do whatever they can. And I really believe that you guys are authentically and genuinely trying to produce data that can be used for paranormal research in the correct way.
I appreciate that, Justin. That's a big thing for me, man. Like, I've been doing this for 16 years. And initially when I was approached about doing this show, I never wanted to be involved in paranormal television. That's not something I wanted to do. It was never a goal of mine, not something I planned on doing.
Because of the stigma attached.
Yeah, I just didn't want to do it. You know what I mean? I've worked with Dr. Harry Clore. I mentioned him earlier, for 10 years. I've worked with engineers from NASA. I've worked with medical doctors in this field to try and advance what we're doing. No way, shape, or form would I put my own credibility on the line for a goddamn TV show. I'm just saying it straight up. I don't care. I did not go on to Ghost Hunters and be part of this to be on TV. I don't care about that aspect of it in any way, shape, or form. That doesn't matter to me. What matters to me is being able to have the platform and the resources to go out and do what we have done for this next season, to be able to have the access to the equipment, being able to vet these eyewitnesses to the extent that we've done it. I never in a million years would have put my credibility or my research on the line for a TV show. It's not what I would do.
Right. Yeah. And I just want to make a point here. If I go Here, let me go to. I think I linked your APRA YouTube channel. Here we go. We're going to see how many subscribers APRA has. Okay, I'm just going to make a point here. 4,000 subscribers. You're doing the same stuff, the same passion is there, the same everything, but only 4,000 people are subjected to it. And if the algorithm isn't right, it's going to be less than that. So what can we do? We can try to reach platforms to get that message out there. I mean, your YouTube channel is great. There's YouTube channels out there that are garbage that have over 100,000 subs. I'm just going to be honest. And it's tough to get your work out there. There's so much saturation in paranormal pop culture right now. So I just think it's unfair that you know every show gets stigmatized and you know gets the bad rap, you know, that, you know, well, if he's on a TV show, he thinks he knows everything. I mean, you've heard it all. So yeah. I want to demystify, or that's the wrong word uses. I want to do away with all of those stereotypes. And I just want to be fair and, you know, let everybody know and let you, you know, defend yourself against that. We're coming up on a break. We're coming up on the midway, so I think it's a good time. Do we have more questions?
Well, I guess this would be a simple yes or no question. Christy wanted to know if you've seen an entity.
Yes.
Good.
What I think is an entity, at least.
He's seen something that was weird, I bet.
Yeah.
We'll get into more personal experiences after the break. Don't go anywhere, guys. We have a lot more questions to ask Brandon. We have a lot more teasing to do with the new season of Ghost Hunters. We will play the trailer to Ghost Hunters Season 2 during the break, so don't go anywhere, guys. We have a lot more coming your way. Stay tuned. Do you have that drive? That morbid curiosity to explore the darkness? Do you have what it takes to brave the night? You do? Good.
Dead light. For those who aren't afraid to see what lurks in the night.
Back off now. In God's name, back off.
You go back to your bathroom, you stay back there.
I got you. Don't fucking touch me! Fuck! Okay. Leave me the fuck alone! Okay, sweetie. Okay. Open the door. Get the door. Open the door. Let's get her out of here.
Get the door.
Come on! Leave me alone! 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 Leave me alone!
Get out of here.
Ow! I can't move my feet! I can't move! I can't move my feet!
In God's name, out of here now!
Is anyone out there?
We're the first people to investigate here.
There have been thousands of people who have died here. We're 100 miles from the closest interstate. Emergency personnel can't be here right away. Welcome to Fort Stanton.
How many believe they've had a paranormal experience? Wow.
This new technology that we utilize for capturing the Holy Grail in paranormal research. What the hell is that? Oh, look, it just appeared again.
You gotta be careful, guys. It's a dangerous situation here.
Let's watch this area. Holy, this is the most mind-boggling thing I've ever seen.
Ghost Hunters 2-hour premiere Wednesday, April 8th at 8 on A&E.
Hey, Ghost Hunters fans. Be sure to subscribe to the A&E YouTube channel for more paranormal content. And catch full episodes on A&E or aetv.com.
This is Jason Bland, host of Midwest Paranormal Presents Paranormal Soup, where we stream live as a webcast every Sunday night, 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. Eastern, with guests who will blow your mind. Live ghost box sessions where you can call into the show to see if the spirits will talk to you, and the World Wide Web of Weird with the latest in paranormal news and evidence. We're bringing the weird every Sunday night, 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. Eastern on our Facebook page and YouTube channel. Don't forget to follow and subscribe.
Hillary.
What?
What's going on with this building?
Everything. A lot of people will come here and get messages from loved ones. This place was holistic. If you come back up here, I will push you to your death.
You're going to die in there.
Something just like flew at me. Something big and like gray.
Whoa, 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 I just saw someone fucking turn the step.
Did you hear that?
I'm not doing like this. I just want this on the record. Mike's gonna see something in that mirror.
This took a big 180. I hope this doesn't change our approach. ask all of y'all to bring something of sentimental value. I think what we're going to do is start off night one, putting that out there as sort of an offering.
I live inside my own world of make-believe. Kids screaming in their cradles, profanities. I see the world through eyes covered in ink and bleach. Cross out the ones who heard my cries and watched me weep. I love everything.
Going into this, we all had certain expectations and what we figured we would find and that kind of stuff. And what we ended up with was something completely and totally different. Spirits, we invite you in here for this offering.
Holy two syllables! Oh!
History is what helps tell the story. Without knowing the history, it's hard to tell the story.
All five of us stumbled upon more so a true story instead of what was told to us.
Sometimes I can tell if my body belongs to me.
What was that?
What the f***?
Hear that?
There was footprints like right behind. Like there was so much movement upstairs, we legit thought somebody had broken into the building.
You're telling the story of the storytellers.
Now, and hello everyone, thank you for standing by during that awesome break we had. Of course, we have A Voice for the Silence coming out very soon. Hopefully we'll get to see that from Gateway Paranormal. RCI is a really cool location, but we have some more questions for Brandon, and we're going to get back to the questions that were asked in chat right now. Did we lose Jess?
I think we did.
We'll find out. We'll find out what happened to Jess in a moment. I'll ask the question for you. I think it was Heath that asked it. He had asked, how, in your opinion, how legitimate and valid is Steve Huff? And go.
Yeah. Well, you know, anyone that relies on equipment that is completely saturated and full of false positives is someone not to be taken seriously. Unfortunately, if you were to take any type of spirit boxes or various ITCs, not all of it, ITC research, and try and speak to dead celebrities and then try and take that to a higher learning of science or anything like that and say, hey, look, I want you to test this, they would laugh you out the door. So I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, and a lot of people emulate people that have large followings, people that are popular. So that is where people like you and I get upset, because they have such an influence. And my reaction to that question is ethics. You have to prioritize. Let's just say a portal can talk to dead people like you're talking to people on the telephone. Let's just say that's a thing, okay? Why would you exploit not only someone who had just passed, but a celebrity where they're anybody that's, you know, involved with them, friends, family, they're probably going to be subjected to what you're doing. It's the probability is so much higher to somebody that's just, you know, someone you picked randomly out of the obituaries.
Exactly.
Let's just face it. Face it. That's what they're doing is exploitation. So knowing that is evidence, clear evidence of what you're doing.
Right, exactly. And that goes back to the conversation we kind of touched on earlier is paranormal malpractice. You know, if you are a lawyer or a doctor and you do something that's ethically not good and incorrect and against the book, you should have your license taken away. And I think that there's certain people out there that conduct research in that manner and certain people that own buildings that conduct themselves in that manner. I think that paranormal malpractice is a real thing, and something I think that should be brought to light a little more than we talk about it now.
Right. Do we have any questions on Facebook? And I'm trying to figure out what happened to Jessica.
I messaged her. She hasn't messaged me back yet.
Maybe their power went down or something.
Shane wants to know, what's your opinion on the legitimacy of the SLS camera?
I actually was interviewed in 2014 by Tech World magazine about the SLS camera. At the time, it was the Kinect, just the actual Kinect device being utilized, in which now become the SLS camera, and adapted into that. And I said, in this field, we're always trying to adapt pieces of technology from various industries, right? But the SLS camera, yet again, just like the Spirit Box, is not providing empirical data or factual evidence. If you were to take that to a professional that does analysis, say even that does video analysis, a video engineer, and you were trying to say, hey, look, I think that I have proof of an entity or a proof of a spirit, and you show them an SLS camera and the mechanics behind the SLS and how it works, it's detected to try and find figures. And if you're actually playing a game and you're trying to work your way through that game, it's actually trying to detect you at a higher frequency and actually help you maintain yourself in that game. So the SLS camera is a tough one. When it comes to factual data and empirical evidence, it can't be taken seriously, unfortunately.
Right. Hey, Jess, can you mute your mic? You're getting some static for some reason. It's probably noise over your cable system, and it should resolve. Okay, so yeah, the SLS, it's such a cool gimmick. It's so cool. It's like you would love this thing to work, and you actually want to look into how devices work. And that's something we advocate all the time on our shows, and I'm sure you feel the same. If you don't understand how it works, you can't apply it to your research.
No, not at all. Absolutely not. You're right, Justin.
What it does, it's a software issue, and that's where the false positives come into play. It's designed to map out something physical using infrared light, and based on the contrast between what it's detecting and the foreground and the background, it's going to try to map in something, whether it has arms that it can see, whether it has head. You see all kinds of strange anomalies on that thing, and that's the software saying, well, I think this is something.
Exactly.
And it's cool. It's cool to watch people say, oh, it's a demon, oh, it's inhuman, and I'm like, oh no, and I'm just going to be honest. It's just plain old fashioned ignorance, and I don't mean that in a negative way. Please don't take that bad. We want you to understand the equipment, so I want you to go out there. The technical information on the SLS is not as readily available as something like a K2 or something more commonly used. But it goes back to the thing we were talking about before with, people take this into a realm of spiritual faith, and it means something to them in that way. And when you challenge that, the cognitive dissonance and the stress that you get from that is going to affect them.
Exactly.
So it is what it
Justin,
is.
You're right, man. You're right, dude. Here's the thing. Here's the cold hard truth about the whole thing. Just because there are certain shows out there that have been on TV for a number of years that have laid the groundwork to act like assholes like that doesn't mean people should act like assholes. Does that make sense? And I'm sorry to be frank that way, but it's a dangerous precedent that we're sending out there, right? It's okay to watch it as entertainment. And it's okay to be like, oh, this is great. I enjoy doing it in paratourism stuff. But there are people going out into homeowner cases, people that are genuinely frightened, some of which many times are people that have psychological problems, are over-medicating themselves, have real serious problems. And people are going into their homes and providing them SLS footage and spirit box recordings and saying, hey, we think there's a demon in your house. That is unbelievably dangerous, and it's wrong. It's wrong. And it's based off of what they're seeing on television. There are a lot of people out there doing really great work. A lot of people from any aspect of investigating. I don't know everything. just because I'm on TV, I don't claim to know everything. That is impossible to know everything. I don't even consider myself to be an expert. At this point in time, I don't think there are experts in the paranormal field. I think one day we can get there with the advancement of technology and protocols and standards of practices. There will be experts one day. But right now, I don't believe that's the case. There are people out there doing great work in the paranormal, from psychic investigations all the way to scientific investigations. But unfortunately, there's so many people out there buying into the gimmick based off of not only what they've seen on certain networks and certain TV shows that is extremely dangerous, but someday, we're going to have to sit here and look ourselves in the mirror and say, hey, do we want to be taken seriously or do we not want to be taken seriously?
Yes. And I know you are just as interested as anybody else in the psychic phenomena. I did another video I watched from APRA. You guys were doing a seance. Yep. And you are not, that's not too good for you. You will do the things that people are doing and take your approach and apply it to that field of research. You want to research, like if there's the psychics in my group, I investigate them. I do double-blind experiments. I research them, I investigate them, and I told them up front, hey, I'm coming from, an ethical, and you can trust me. I'm not out to make you look bad or to try to debunk psychics. There's something to it. There's something there that, whether it be keen intuition or something else, there's something to psychic phenomena. I think so. If I feel like there is, I'm going to investigate it. So that's what I liked when I watched it. I was like, okay, he's not that skeptical. He's going to take a look at these things and study it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the term skeptic gets thrown around a lot, and I think that there's a negative connotation associated with the term skeptic, which is sad. Skeptics aren't people that don't believe in something. If you're a quote unquote skeptic and you go into a situation and you automatically don't believe it, then why are you involved in any way, shape, or form? A skeptic is someone that wants to find evidence that the phenomena does exist. And that's being open-minded. That's going into a situation and accounting everything, taking inventory of that, trying to find empirical evidence of it, and trying to find data associated with it. I very much have looked into psychic phenomena for many years. I think it's a legitimate thing. Do I think that a lot of people have it? No, I think some do. I think there's a natural ability within all of us. I think there's an empathic ability within every single person on this planet. I think that's natural. But the real psychic phenomena, I do think there is a reality to it. I think that it exists, and I think that it can be documented in one way, shape, or form. But again, I'm open-minded in that regard, and I kind of get a rap for being a guy that doesn't believe in certain things, or ooh, the science guy, the big bad wolf that's trying to, to disprove everything you're doing. That's not who I am. I'm the guy that's trying to go out there and apply scientific method to try and help understand what we're doing, not to disprove it, to try and say, hey, look, the things, if you already believe in it, right? Say you use your SB7 spirit box everywhere you go, and you have, in your opinion, undeniable proof that ghosts exist, and you have it through your SB7 spirit box. Why aren't you open to having science further that? Why aren't you open to opening that to scientific scrutiny? What are you so afraid of if you already believe it? I know
the answer. I know the answer. We already answered it.
Yeah.
Well, Yeah. I just wanted to say, you asked the question rhetorically, I guess. So I wanted to answer it. Again, we're delving into people's spiritualities. So there's a gap. There's a gap into where people that don't realize that what they're doing is their spiritual practice. They call it paranormal research. They call it ghost hunting, but what it actually is their spiritual practice. So
I just don't understand why they don't want to have science involved. That's the biggest thing for me. It's so laughable at times to me. Is like they think that science is this thing that's going to come out and just disprove everything they've done. That's not the case. There may be some people out there that are from scientific mind, many of which aren't really scientists, because the majority of the scientists I've consulted over my years are creative thinkers, are people that are out there to look at the beyond. Isaac Newton, Nikola Tesla, people like that weren't sitting in a lab waiting for the next biggest breakthrough. You know what I mean? They were out there doing the work. They were out there looking at the things that some would consider unexplainable or paranormal at the time.
Yeah.
So the people in this field, science is not out there to get you. Science is out there to aid our research and for us to be taken seriously. And if we want to move forward, we have to do it.
Yeah, and I wish I had another hour to show. When you bring up Einstein and Newton and everything, I mean, they delve in philosophy. They looked at God as a mathematical, perfect construct, a universal mathematical, beautiful, the laws of physics are beautiful. And they said it didn't have to be this way. And you look at quantum entanglement and you look at all these things that seem counterintuitive. You could debate whether you could call that paranormal. Like, why does this particle seem to do this over here? There's no answer. So that's why I kind of love applying that. We'll shift gears. We have questions. I don't want to turn this into a science show, which I would love to do. But let's get to. I know Heath asked what Brandon thought about Zach Baggins. Baggins. Yeah.
I've been on the show twice. I know Zach. I've spoken to him multiple times. I was on his show for the first time in 2009. He brought me on as an evidence analyst for a piece of footage he collected at Waverly Hills. Funny enough, we talked about Waverly earlier. Mm-hmm. He brought me on to not only talk about that on air, but to analyze that. And he also brought me on in 2016, I believe, to talk about a location that actually they contacted me about, and I got them into a location in Los Angeles called the Casa de la Rosa. But Zach's an interesting dude. You know what I mean? He's I like to call him the P.T. Barnum of the paranormal. You know what I mean? The guy's got the museum. He's got the gimmick down. He's got people convinced of a certain way to investigate the paranormal. I don't agree with it. It's not the way I conduct my research. I think that it's not setting a good precedence. But I think that, I mean, he's a smart businessman, and that's it at the end of the day. Business and paranormal research are not one and the same. And if you make them one and the same, I think that we're getting into pretty muddy territory.
Right. And I'm going to add this. What he's doing is a business. So if you want to blame Zach Baggins, blame the people who has enabled him and made him successful doing that. He's only doing what people want. He's found the formula. This is what people want. This is what's going to make me successful. So I'm going to do that. So the people like, let's say, the skeptics out there are the people that want to take all that fancy, dramatic sensationalism out of it. They're going to be on this kind of mid platform, and the people that like that, I'm scared, bro, what's that sound, bro, type of, show. That's what people are watching. I mean, so it's an industry. It's money.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I have another question. Joe sent it to me.
Okay.
When people accuse a TV show for being fake, what is it that Brandon would like to say, considering those that are yelling fake have not been part of or don't understand the process of filming?
Yeah, it's a great question. I can only speak for my time on Ghost Hunters, as well as the show I did in 2014 on the Science Channel, which we were the only paranormal investigation team to actually ever be featured on the Science Channel, which I think is really exciting. But I would never put myself in a position to fake anything. Literally, that's the last thing I wanted to do. I worked as a promotions producer for ABC, CBS, and Fox for the years leading up prior to joining Ghost Hunters. I left that job to do Ghost Hunters, not because I wanted to be on television, which I mentioned earlier, but I wanted to further this field. When you film a TV show, there are certain parts of the show that are not scripted, but you have to fulfill the buildup to let people know what the case is about. But the investigation is completely off limits. At least at my time on the show, they don't tell me what to do. They don't involve themselves into our investigation. They're there from a documentary style point of view to document our investigation. And they put us in a situation, a client in need that's been contacted, has been vetted. They put us there and they document it. That's it. So some people out there that automatically want to think that certain shows are fake, hey, some might be, I don't know, I can't speak for those shows, but I can speak for my time on Ghost Hunters and tell you there has never been a situation where I was told or pressured to do something that was disingenuous or fake in any way, shape, or form.
And I have to add to this. If you're intelligent and you understand the industry and you understand the art of media and filmmaking, you don't have to fake it. If you can deliver the story, nothing can happen. Just documenting the people's recollection of what happened and filming it in such a way, you can provide zero documented alleged paranormal evidence and still have people sitting on the edge of their seat, still glued to their seat, if you know what you're doing. So the people that feel like they need to fake it or sensationalize, they don't. I just feel that's just a lack of intelligence and lack of understanding the art form, which is television, which is filmmaking.
Yeah. Another thing I will say, Justin, right now, there's a big difference between watching a show and fundamentally knowing that something isn't right, and then seeing something that you can't explain and saying, oh, that's fake, because it looks so, it looks like something you've never seen before. And saying, oh, automatically, I don't understand it, it's fake. But when you watch certain shows on a very particular network that I will not name, a majority of those shows on there, deep down inside, there's something quite not right about what you're watching. The methodology associated with it, the equipment being utilized, the reactions, let's be honest, people, exactly when you're seeing something that's not right and disingenuous, comparative to seeing something that you're like, whoa, that looks like something I've never seen, therefore it's fake. They're definitely different. They're not the same.
You're asking people to remove bias, though, Brandon.
I know.
How dare you?
I know.
I know we have questions, right? I see Katie Turner has joined us.
Liz Coy wanted to know. She said, "What does Brandon think about orbs?"
Orbs, interesting topic. Orbs have always been an interesting topic. Here's the most controversial topic in the paranormal, right?
I did see, I don't know if you have like a prism or something in your window that reflects light, but at the beginning of the show, I seen something.
Did you?
Yeah.
Watch out, guys.
And I was like, he's got to have something in his window.
No, it was like 15 of us seen it.
Yeah, I have a piece of stained glass.
There it is.
And the windows I have here in my place, like the sun, I live so the ocean's like right here. So the sun's like constantly in the view. So it hits that piece of stained glass and it looks amazing. The colors that come out are really great.
It provided some cool light play too.
Yeah, right. Exactly. It looks great. But orbs are very interesting, right? So when we talk about the transfer from tape to digital, that's really when you started to see the orb phenomena, start to really come into play, right? And I know Justin knows this very well. You start to see that the digital sensors and the sensors involved in some of these cameras, as well as the flash associated with it, are creating what some would, perceive to believe be unexplained phenomena, orbs, but a lot of times it's moisture, dust, and bugs. But there is a very valid phenomena out there that is referred to luminous phenomena. It's real, and people have documented it, and the scientific community's even talked about it. So there is a phenomena out there that I would refer to as luminous phenomena that is real, but there's a lot of misconception with digital photography and infrared lighting and different types of lighting, that you do have a reflection off of very natural particular matter, dust, moisture, and bugs. But luminous phenomena is real, and I think it can be documented.
Right. And I think what is so what makes the topic controversial and so highly debated is the people that see the luminous phenomena or self-illuminous phenomena. It looks so similar to illuminated dust or airborne particles that are out of focus, that are translucent. Yep. It looks almost exactly the same. And that's why it's so tough, because I have seen the luminous phenomena you talked about one time. I didn't have no cameras, and they were coming into the room, and I was like, immediately I thought I was hallucinating, but if it wasn't for someone seeing the exact same thing when I did, I would still think I was hallucinating. It was crazy, but there's something to it. So, do some photography classes.
Exactly.
Basic photography classes will get you there.
Exactly. Here's the thing. Here's what I would say. So if you're trying to say there's an eyewitness out there that has seen this luminous phenomena with their own eyes, right? I say you not only try and document that from two different spectrums, possibly three different spectrums if possible. You record that in infrared, UV, and full spectrum, right? Full spectrum, or I actually would go thermal. I wouldn't go full spectrum. I'd go thermal. So you go with an infrared, UV, and a thermal. You line those three cameras up and you shoot it in the direction that they say they see this phenomena. If it is particular matter like dust or bugs or moisture, that'll show up in your infrared. If it's a bug, that'll show up in your thermal. But if it is this luminous type of phenomena, not only are you going to document it on all three, you'll know from the UV recording as well as the thermal that you're dealing with something that's not of those particular matter. And I will say that in this first episode you're about to see on April 8th, this 2-hour premiere, we documented something that's going to be very controversial on this scientific piece of equipment that's going to be it's going to put people in a position to argue on both sides of the camps there. So I can't wait for that to happen. I can't wait to see the conversation associated with it.
You bring up the thermal imaging cameras, and there's a lot of people that don't understand how they work. They're designed to measure surface temperatures. So when you're trying to look for cold spots, you need enough physical material there for it to be measured with a FLIR camera, for example.
Yep.
So a lot of people don't know that, and of course they don't know if you shine it at a reflective surfaces, it's going to be like a mirror. You're going to see yourself. You're going to see a reflection. So that's why I think a lot of people like to debate. I think if you know how to use the device, you understand how it works. There are applications, like I tell people, if you're going to use that, your trigger objects that you have setting up, or that door you saw move on its own, read the door. See if there's any temperature anomalies on the door. If there was physical contact, there should be temperature variation. The odds of it, the odds of the force applied to the door was the same temperature as the door is low.
Yeah, exactly. Not only that, so we're talking about this luminous phenomena, for instance. So if this is a phenomena we're not familiar with, and this phenomena is its own ball of light, therefore there has to be energy associated with that, therefore there should be some kind of temperature change. So therefore this thermal imaging camera should detect that change in temperature, which would be an application that you would use a thermal imaging camera for. So it's definitely interesting. But again, I think that's a really practical way to use a thermal imaging camera. But again, I think that there are certain types of phenomena, or according to eyewitnesses, that you can utilize that, you can utilize the thermal imaging camera, and it can be very practical.
Yeah, what I would like to see is if someone's seeing the mist, if the mist is dense enough, it has enough mass, it should show up on the thermal. It should. But as far as like a light anomaly, I don't know if that would show up, because it may just be photons. There's no mass there.
Well, it depends. Depends, and not everything could be made of that. You know what I mean? It could be made up of different types of matter. So who knows? And I think that if we're observing that and we're looking into that, that's when you have to look at it from both sides. And if we collect the data, we can analyze that further.
Yeah, you definitely should. I definitely feel like the infrared or the FLIR, the thermal imager, has applications. As long as you know what you're doing, you should be fine. Anything else from chat?
I only have one more question.
Okay.
It was, I don't remember who asked it. The question was, what does Brandon think of Ouija boards?
The Ouija boards are, no different than going into a location and utilizing an audio recorder. It's the same thing. It's no different. If you look at something made by Parker Brothers and think it's from the devil, I don't know what to tell you. So, but you go into a location and you use a digital audio recorder and you start to say, "Hey, I'm here to speak with you. Let's communicate." That's literally no different than using a piece of wood and a planchette, in my opinion. I think that is just a different medium.
I honestly feel like some people believe that they've had experiences with the Ouija board, and there's probably some cases out there where there was something that happened, but I think that their psyche and their intent had more to do with it than the actual act of moving the planchette and the board and everything.
Exactly. I don't think it's it's some devilish piece of equipment or anything like that. I think that it's just, something for people to use and entertainment purposes only. Yet again, maybe it works sometimes, maybe it doesn't, but I don't think it's a dangerous thing to play with. I mean, I guess it's all according to the person's intention. I think you can do the same thing with any type of equipment. It's all about a person's intention.
Yep, you heard it from Justin here first. If you want to look for evil, look at people.
Yeah, that's for sure.
YouTube, is there anything from YouTube that we need to address? I'm looking here.
Please.
Truth Paranormal, that's Joe. He says, I don't think it was black orbs. I think it was 745.
It's a joke going back and forth.
Okay.
Because
it's hard to read through this because a lot of people are having conversations.
Yeah, it says, I saw a few black orbs in the corner house. That's something I've never seen before. And isn't the 745 what Joe didn't push the button on?
Yeah, the especially in infrared. When I was studying on infrared light, there's some things that can appear black. CO2 and water vapor, water moisture can appear black. It absorbs infrared light, and regular spectrum light that people can see, it does the opposite. So I think that's interesting. That's why you can see through shirts and see through people's tattoos, right. And it's interesting. So a lot
of just take a pressure washer and just blow that into the frame of a infrared light, it would be black. Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. Something like that.
So I would, I've seen some things, and it kind of gives you something to infer. Like if you see a black orb in infrared, maybe if you had equipment to measure humidity or measure CO2, that equipment's readily available. Maybe you should start deploying that in the vicinity of where you're seeing it to see if you can get data to back that up.
Yeah, exactly. That's the best way to do it. Correlation, man. That's the key. And that's one thing that we've done on this new season of Ghost Hunters is going in and trying to correlate devices, everything from environmental conditions to trying to recognize patterns. And we're doing our best. And once we collect that data, we have something we can't explain. We consult people from various industries and we get their information about it. And they tell us what their opinion is on it before we go to the client.
That's awesome. I will ask this question for everybody, and it's one of those generic questions, but I have to go there. Has there been a point in time during your paranormal research and investigation that you felt unsafe, or that you felt fear, or you were changed in some way because of maybe some negative experience?
I've been in a few cases that I've worked that, were on the more negative side of things. And, it's something that you have to really stop and, look yourself in the mirror and say, hey, like, what's my involvement in this? How do I proceed? But I never really went any further beyond that to be affected in it, if that makes sense. It was just more kind of looking at my participation, my intention in it, and to know that I'm there for the right reasons, and to know that I'm not going to let something like that affect me beyond trying to help that situation. So I never really was affected beyond that, but going in, just trying to do my best and remain grounded and know that I'm there to help somebody, and not only help somebody, but try and collect the proper data. So I've never really been affected beyond that. Luckily.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think it's rare, but I think a lot of people go out looking for it, and all of a sudden it turns into everything is negative, especially when you bring your own spirituality into things. But we won't go there. You said that you've seen something that you couldn't explain. Do you care to elaborate on that at all?
Yeah, I know. I've been on a couple of investigations over the years that I've seen things I can't quite explain. But there's always one that sticks out in my mind. In the winter of 2008, I was on the RMS Queen Mary in Long Beach, a location that's widely known as possibly one of the most haunted places in the world. And I was actually basing my research off of a man named Peter James, which I'm sure a lot of people out there are familiar with from Sightings fame and his work on that show. And I went out there because he was claiming to be in contact with this little girl named Jackie.
He's deceased now, right?
He is. Yeah, he is. And I went out there to try and see if I can pick up where he left off and some of the things that he documented that I thought were pretty strange. Mm-hmm. And I was in the first class pool changing stalls in the winter of 2008 with another APRA investigator. I was teaching her how to conduct an EMF sweep properly. I gave her a mini DV camera, and we collected something unbelievable and something that no one can explain to this day. And it's out there. It's on YouTube as well as the APRA Paranormal page. But that's something I'll never forget, and something I hope people look at and look into. We've had it analyzed many times over the years. It's actually one of the pieces of footage that got Dr. Harry Clore involved with our research. But man, the Queen Mary is a really interesting place. So if anyone gets an opportunity to go out there, I definitely would recommend checking that out.
So did you see an apparition? Did you see a shadow? What did you see?
I didn't see it myself per se. It was the footage. You know what I mean?
Okay.
I always let the footage kind of speak for itself. You know, it wasn't really the personal experience behind it per se. It was more about what was collected. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So that would be a moment that really sticks out in my mind.
So you haven't seen anything with your eyes outside of reviewing video?
I have. You know, I've seen a few things. I've never seen, you know, what looks like a person, you know, standing in front of me. I've always seen you can see what shadow play, things like that, things that always make you kind of second guess what you're really looking at. But beyond that, no, not really.
How would you speculate? Like if you were trying to understand or explain why people see anything ranging from full blown, looks like me and you apparition to shadow figures, mist, like, do you feel like, I'm going to answer this question directly. Do you feel like the people who see things fully manifested, like they're real, do you feel like they're using senses outside the normal senses that we understand? Or do you think there's a ghost looking physical AF right there? Like, what have you thought about that?
I think different factors come into it. You know what I mean? I think that there probably is a human factor to it, just like you're mentioning, like within that own person's ability, maybe that plays into it, but it's tough. And that's one of the biggest things that we've been trying to accomplish, or I have in the last 16 years, is really getting behind the idea of manifestations and the mechanics behind it and why certain people see manifestations differently. Is it different types of entities? Is it different types of manifestations? I don't know. It's the hard part, but I do think that there's a human factor involved in it. And that's something we just have to monitor, look into further. And hopefully one day, the further that we try and document it and try to collect data, maybe we'll have an answer.
Yeah, I second that. I know I've brought up on the show, I recently, I'm part of the RU Media Network on Facebook, and they brought up an interesting thing. I like the explanation behind why people see like shadow people or see things that are like illusions. You ever seen the video or the optical illusion where you stare at an inverted picture with a dot on their nose and you stare at it for a good 30-60 seconds, and then they show you a white blank screen and they see the inversion of that image?
Right.
Are you familiar with that optical anomaly? Yeah. I wonder, after seeing that again, how many times people's been fooled by that. Like, let's just say you're watching TV late at night, it's dark, and your TV's very bright, and you're staring at this illuminated box, which is your TV, and all of a sudden you look away and you see something like a shadow, or you see some optical anomaly. I feel like that's very possible that people can see optical illusions, and that might be the reason or the explanation why they're seeing something that they would perceive as paranormal. Do you have anything else to add to how people can misperceive or misidentify things like that?
Well, I think it's a really great analogy there, talking about seeing that, look at that dot and having that, in your vision and seeing that. I think that's a really great way to put it. But there's all kinds of different factors that can come into play when it comes to people thinking that they're seeing something unexplainable with their own eyes. So it's tough. A lot of times people are in a location that's poorly lit, or they have a preconceived notion that there's, it's a haunted place. So it's very tough. It's always really tough to base anything off of eyewitness testimony. But again, going into a location, it's all about observing and reporting. But there's so many different factors that can come into play. It could be really tough to really decide exactly what it is.
Right. I know a couple things come into my mind, like proteins in the eye. They cause floaters. Mm-hmm. And people will see like maybe a black dot, or depending on the lighting condition, it might be bright, depending on the lighting condition. And I think this is a very good thing to bring up and to educate people on, that there's explainable things and there's actual literature and information and resources to go out there and check out, to, you know, just to say, hey, I'm just not saying this. It's just not Justin coming up with excuses, but you can go out and research all this stuff. And I want to throw an idea at you. And I don't know if you've ever thought about this, and you have, I would be really impressed. Shadow people. It's very highly reported phenomena. And I started looking at information about bird navigation. And you probably have read some of the articles where there is a quantum entanglement effect with Cry4 cryptochrome proteins in the eye that allows birds and insects to see magnetic field lines. If the lighting conditions are correct, they see a shadowy overlay where the magnetic field lines of the Earth are. And they've actually proven that this is how they navigate. So if this is true, cryptochrome Cry4 is found in the human eye. But the levels of the protein vary throughout the day. So theoretically, if there is a lot of Cry4 protein in the eye and the lighting conditions are good, and if ghosts or paranormal things have magnetic fields associated with it, theoretically you might see a shadowy mass if that Cry4 is there. Have you ever heard of this being applied to maybe an explanation behind why some people see shadow figures more than others?
I haven't. No, it's very interesting though. I'm familiar with what you're talking about, but I've never thought about it from the paranormal perspective like that. And I think that's a really interesting application that should be looked into. I think that's actually brilliant.
So what I'm getting to, Brandon, is pitch this to people with money and tell them, hey, we need to test this. We're going to inject Cry4 into people's eyes.
Yeah.
And we're going to set up some magnetic fields and see if they can see it. That's right. That's what I want to do. And here's another theory, and it involves thermal phenomena. Well, I just want to pitch to you. I have this chance. I might not have it again. Now, a lot of people use passive infrared sensors, like motion sensors, to ghost hunt with to see if they can find some movement. And you're from California. You've been driving down the hot summer road and see the mirage effect, right? Mm-hmm. It's what has happening is the heat energy is so high that the photons that are coming towards your eye are being bent away, causing that anomaly. So let's just speculate that the hot spots that people see on their thermal imaging, or maybe what's setting off the passive infrared detectors, what if that thermal phenomena is bending the light away from your eye in a similar way, causing the shadowy effect? That's another hypothesis that I would love to test. And maybe we might show up on Ghost Hunters, hint, hint.
You never know.
I just want to see all this stuff tested because I'm a nerd. And it would be freaking awesome to see if it had some validity to it.
Well, you're going to see some things here coming up soon. You've hit a few points that I think you'll be interested in. So
I hope so, man.
But you're hitting a few. There's been a very specific topic or a very specific terminology you've used a few times. You're gonna love. You're gonna love it.
Let's take this last 10 minutes to really get people excited about Ghost Hunters Season 2, the premiere. What do you have left in the tank to get people excited for this new season?
Again, I keep saying it, but breakthroughs, man. Breakthroughs. That's the biggest thing, is that we've been unleashed when it comes to that. The original Ghost Hunters show, the way that format, the way that show ran was because it was based off of TAPS methodology, right? And the way that TAPS did their investigations and their protocol. And the first season of the reboot of Ghost Hunters, the new version, was a bit to that. It wasn't per se the original format, but what you're about to see in the next season is not the same in any way, shape, or form. It is a completely new methodology, a completely new show, and a completely new format. You're going to see something fresh, something new, and something that's going to provide factual data breakthroughs to this field, and something that's going to be a breath of fresh air when it comes to the paranormal field, not only from the perspective of the same style formats and TV shows that people have been watching for a number of years, but it's going to be fresh and exciting. And I just can't wait for people to see it.
Awesome. So do you want to plug anything else? Do you want to, I have APRA's YouTube channel. I have your personal website. in the descriptions of all the live videos that we're streaming now. You can go ahead and plug any of those. I want to make sure that, all the money and time you're spending on these projects and websites are getting traffic from this show. I want that to happen for you. So plug everything.
I appreciate that, man. The main thing is just anything that I'm doing at the moment is on brandonjalvis.com. That's where you're going to find a lot of what I'm doing. Cemeteryparkfilm.com. It's a film that I've been working on for a few years. It's actually wrapped and done. Since I started Ghost Hunters, I haven't had a chance to go out and get distribution for it because of working on the show. But I have uncovered a illegal act that took place in a city government where they legally disposed of a cemetery. And I've not only talked to a man that's been fighting against that for 15 years, but I made a film about it. And it's on the true crime side of things. It's not a paranormal themed film in any way, shape, or form, but you can see that at cemeteryparkfilm.com. But the majority of what I'm doing is going to be at brandonjalvis.com, and you can see some of my documentary work, not only from a historical web series I did called A.P.R.A. It was nominated for 4 awards, one from the International Academy of Web Television. But you can see that on my website, and you can look it up on YouTube as well, A.P.R.A. show. So we got a few things out there, but my main focus here the past year has been Ghost Hunters. And again, I'm excited. April 8th, 8 p.m. A&E. Really looking forward to it.
The Cemetery Park is good, guys. It is good. When it comes out, you guys definitely need to give it all the support you can. I like the website that you have. I like the format of it. Definitely go check out Brandon's website. All those links are in the video description. And man, I just got to tell you, I am very appreciative of your time. I think the first season of this new reboot of Ghost Hunters is great. And I think that you guys have built a great platform, this jumping off point to only see new and exciting things, refreshing things like you have told us. For people not to go out and check it out would be a shame. And for people just to be biased and say it's just another ghost show would be a shame. If you care about my opinion whatsoever, folks, you have to check out Ghost Hunter Season 2. You have to just give them the time of your day to see what they're doing. They're legitimately trying to add legitimacy to the paranormal field. Everybody wants to see that happen, and they're going to use this platform that allows them to use all the great gadgets, to use all the great tools, to have these resources, like scientists at different fields of research, experts, all this stuff. If you have that power and know how to use it, you're going to have probably the best result you could possibly have, outside of having this millionaire, kind of like the movie Contact, where she gives the SETI researcher all this money to go do these things, and they transport her through that thing. You've watched that movie, right?
Oh, yeah.
What would you do if some millionaire said, "Hey, here's $10 million and go"? What would you do?
Oh man, that would be Kid in the Candy Store, that's for sure.
You would like be turning. You would actually be going to Beverly Hills and be like, "Can I build a lab right here? Here's $1 million."
Absolutely, exactly.
That's what I would do. I would be like, "You skeptics out there, you want it so bad? Here it is."
Mm-hmm.
I would do it, and all it takes, I'm sure the Mattingleys would be like, "Sure, go build a lab right there." I'm sure a lot of people that own those locations would be open to that. I mean, that's what we mean by, hey, Ghost Hunters. It's a platform, if used correctly, can be legitimate. It can be a resource that everybody can learn from. And I think that's the takeaway I think you guys want people to see. You want to raise the bar, because you guys understand that you have to raise the bar. You guys are the bar, really. I mean, what else is the bar? I mean, there's obscure parapsychologists out there and researchers who are good, but just they're not known unless you bring them onto these shows, because that's what everybody's influenced by. It's crazy, this day and age that we live in, that everybody's so influenced by, media and movies and pulp culture. I mean, you have to squeeze in there and try to scream as loud as you can. So I wish you all the best, Brandon, on this new season. And I think we've hyped it up as much as we possibly can.
I appreciate it, man. No, seriously, thanks for having me on. It's been a pleasure. It's great talking with you, not only about the science side of things, but it's been a pleasure just to sit here and talk about everything. And I think, again, April 8th, I think people are going to be blown away by what they're going to see. It's a 2-hour event, 2-hour premiere, and it's for a good reason. And going forward, Wednesdays at 9 on A&E, it's going to be really something to see,
Awesome. Well, we're going to wrap it up. Brandon, now we release you from Necromancer, and now you can go be dad.
Awesome.
And
Thanks, guys.
If you want to stick around as I'm wrapping it up, you can, but if you got to go, we understand. But again, thanks, Brandon. All the best, and we're looking forward to it.
Awesome, guys. Thank you so much. Talk to you soon.
Brandon.
Thanks, Brandon. All right, guys, you have no excuse to not check out Brandon's website, Ghost Hunters Season 2, the season premiere, April 8th. You definitely want to check that out. Cemetery Park is a cool film, and once that hits the public, your guys are going to really appreciate Brandon's work on that film. It was so great to watch that, and a privilege to see it before its release. You guys are awesome. We love everybody that's tuned in tonight. You guys make this show what it is, so I just want to give you guys credit and the love that you guys deserve. Not only are you going to check out the links in the description for Brandon, I want you to check out interfacedeath.net if you have not already. We have just released a commercial documentary on our website. It's only available on our website right now. You can rent it. You can purchase a digital download, and you can buy the Blu-ray if you so wish to. You can support us on Patreon and get rewards if you want to do that. You can find Necromancer Live Show on Facebook. It's also airs on Twitch, Periscope, and YouTube. You can check out our personal paranormal research on Twitter, on Instagram, and you can join our Discord server and join that community as well. And last but not least, we are going to shout out our Patreons. Like I said, they make this content that you see each and every week in the paranormal documentaries and everything that we do possible. So please extend your thanks to Clay Borman, Scotty Fox, Katie Turner, RJ Murphy, Casey Schreiner, Deadlight LLC, Jessica Bias, Paranormal Reporter, aka Bill Davis, Joe Vitale, Heather Elliott, Betty Kegley, Cherry Capital Shadow Seekers, Kelly McConkey and the Ghost Guild, Anthony Grothis, and Jen Rawl 7. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And that's where I'm going to leave it, guys. Like I said, you guys are awesome. April 8th is the premiere of Ghost Hunters. We'll air the trailer again at the end of the show. You guys have been great. We have Interface Death Weekly, 8 p.m. Eastern on Friday. Again, as always, we'll see you next time. Do you have that drive? That morbid curiosity to explore the darkness? Do you have what it takes to brave the night? You do? Good.
Deadlight.
off now. In God's name, back off. Oh.
You go back to your bathroom, you stay back there.
But I got you. Don't fucking touch me! Fuck! Okay. Leave me the fuck alone! Okay, sweetie. Okay. Open the door, get the door. Open the door, let's get her out of here.
Get the door.
God! Leave me alone! 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 Leave me alone!
Get out of here.
Ow! I can't move my feet! I can't move my feet! In God's name, out of here now!
This is Jason Bland, host of Midwest Paranormal Presents Paranormal Soup, where we stream live as a webcast every Sunday night, 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. Eastern, with guests who will blow your mind. Live ghost box sessions where you can call into the show to see if the spirits will talk to you, and the World Wide Web of Weird with the latest in paranormal news and evidence. We're bringing the weird every Sunday night, 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. Eastern on our Facebook page and YouTube channel. Don't forget to follow and subscribe.
Is anyone out there?
We're the first people to investigate here.
There have been thousands of people who have died here. We're 100 miles from the closest interstate. Emergency personnel can't be here right away. Welcome to Fort Stanton.
How many believe they've had a paranormal experience? Wow.
This new technology that we utilize for capturing the Holy Grail in paranormal research. What the hell is that? Oh, look, it just appeared again.
You gotta be careful, guys. It's a dangerous situation here.
Let's watch this area. This is the most mind-boggling thing I've ever seen.
Ghost Hunters 2-hour premiere Wednesday, April 8th at 8 on A&E.
Hey Ghost Hunters fans, be sure to subscribe to the A&E YouTube channel for more paranormal content and catch full episodes on A&E or AETV.com.
Did ask all of y'all to bring something of sentimental value. I think what we're going to do is start off night one, putting that out there as sort of an offering.
I live inside my own world of make-believe. Kids screaming in their cradles, profanities. I see the world through eyes covered in ink and bleach. Cross out the ones who heard my cries and watched me weep. I love everything.
Going into this, we all had certain expectations and what we figured we would find and that kind of stuff. And what we ended up with was something completely and totally different.
Spirits, we invite you in here for this offering. Oh!
Holy! 2 syllables! Oh!
History is what helps tell the story. Without knowing the history, it's hard to tell the story.
All five of us stumbled upon more so a true story instead of what was told to us.
Sometimes I can tell if my body belongs to me.
What was that?
What the f***?
Hear that?
There was footprints like right behind. Like there was so much movement upstairs, we legit thought somebody had broken into the building.
You're telling the story of the storytellers.